You could just go off of that.
But no, the point was that I think it was just easier for men to grasp onto these ideologies because they saw themselves as the direct beneficiaries of this ideology.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. Do you guys have any other thoughts on that?
Um, no, not at the moment. I mean, I do see it. I do see it, within society now, where it's, you know, I think there's various versions of feminism, right? And not all feminists agree with each other. There's very much the
Yeah, I mean, I think
feminism. Oh, go ahead.
no. I think the biggest battle is just the leftist feminism, what feminism really
Yeah.
is, versus
Capitalist.
Western
Yeah.
liberalist feminism.
Exactly, exactly. And I
And
feel
so
like,
I think no, go ahead.
no, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, I feel more so like the feminism that's associated with more so like right values, I think they're more focused on, the yo, I'm the boss bitch. I'm the CEO now, which I feel like at times this can start to, strive to be like the man, but in this situation, it's the patriarchal man, and so that just runs into issues. It runs into problems where
No, yeah.
they start
It,
neglecting the community, and they start focusing on the individual while neglecting their
right.
own self-love. They start becoming but also us, whoever tries to embrace that type of ideology, um, with time, um, they become this the they how can I explain, their self-esteem becomes a lot like lower, right? Where they don't feel confident in themselves. They feel like their only self-worth is, well, I gotta keep working. I gotta keep putting in the grind. And as the minute I
Yeah.
stop putting in the grind, then people can start seeing that. And I don't want people to see me any less than the boss,
Hmm.
No, yeah.
and that could definitely have a toll on you mentally,
Yeah.
because you're isolating yourself in this situation. If you really are the CEO or the boss, you're isolating yourself from the people you work with every day. Your people. You have that mentality. It was like, no, I have to be the boss, so I'm gonna keep on like doing boss shit, whatever that is, and
No, yeah.
you start to neglect yourself because you're trying to embody the patriarchal image. And that's the thing. The patriarchal image could care two shits about whatever you feel. It could care less. It
Yeah.
does not care for you. It does not care for your emotions. It does not care
Yeah.
Hmm.
for your needs, right? It just
Hmm.
cares that
Yeah.
you're constantly
And,
producing.
mm, mm. And I'll add to that, like, especially if forming to it, it definitely does not give a single fuck about you, you know? Like, I think we talked about this last episode when we talked about justice. Um, but it kind of like, this belief of capitalist women kind of reminds me of the belief of like that we talked about of like Marianismo, like patriarchy being led by women. Um, it's conflicting at times, Like it
Yeah.
just reminds me of this belief that like, we're being taught capitalism and we're being taught patriarchy by people who don't benefit from it.
Hmm.
And it just
Wow.
confuses the fuck out of another generation. Like we're being taught capitalism by the working class who's being fucked by capitalism, and we're being taught patriarchy by women who are being fucked by patriarchy. And although
Hmm.
we are all victims of patriarchy and capitalism, those are the main victims, like
Hmm.
those circles are the main victims of this, and those are the people teaching us this. At least, you know, our generation, especially our generation as minorities, where we lose the men of our communities consistently. We really do have Marianismo, where the main people teaching us these values are people who aren't going to benefit from them.
Yeah, and I would
And
like you
it's just
said,
crazy, bro. It's just fucking crazy.
yeah, and I would echo that, Frank, based on what you said, especially
No, go
with
ahead, Bryce.
just from the experience that like the three of us have had is like if you take it a step further, it's like not only are we being taught by the laboring class to pursue this lie, or not only we taught by the women in our lives to pursue this lie, that again, this lie is based on exploitation, on abuse. But even if you take it a step further for minorities, specifically for Black and Brown communities, like we're taught, even in the midst of those communities, by people who again are not benefiting from this pursuit of capital, that this is what's going to save us, that this is what we're supposed to do, and that this is like the way that we can garner some of that self-respect or some of that even just like
Man,
human respect that has been stripped from us. That
man,
if
Hmm.
you can produce and if you can achieve this wealth, that it'll make all those other things okay. And I think that that idea just really separates and breaks down the truth of capitalism, is that you can't separate it from patriarchy or from sexism or from racism.
Yeah.
no, yeah, that's so good. I just wanted to say something real quick. I think, out of all the chapters we've covered so far, this chapter is the one that I feel is most closely related to the first chapter, especially because she brings up M. Scott Peck again, who is the guy she uses like his definition of love. She uses him in her intro quote here, and then again she brings up her definition of love consistently, but also because it just reminds me of so many things that I brought up in that first episode. Javi, I don't know if you remember, but we talked about George Jackson, and George Jackson again like has just did such a good job at breaking down the way um, families that don't benefit from these things build you into this person, you know? Like we're being taught to be a part of this cycle. We're being taught to be a puzzle piece to the puzzle that is capitalism, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it just sucks because in that same sense, I think the way that we're taught love, we're being taught to be able to play the game that everyone else is playing in the society. Not that it's correct, not that it's really love, and not that it's good for us, but just because it's the cycle that society has taken. Um, and it's a cycle that our parents will teach us because they played that game too, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I don't think that game is different for someone that finds their true love, quote unquote, at 18 than it is for someone that doesn't get married till 35. Because if they both did it through the values that were taught to them through patriarchy, capitalism, and racism, then they did it in a fucked up way, and it's gonna fuck them up in a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
I think you see like relationships trying to last that, they found their true love at 18. They have their kids, but they struggle. They're going to consistently struggle with what love is and what it is that the society is asking them on how to raise their children.
Mm-hmm.
And that person that's single till they're 35 because they've been struggling with capitalism will continue to struggle with capitalism if they never found a way to be against it. If you never
Mm-hmm.
found a way to step up against it, then you're feeding into it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I just think like George Jackson, points that out. He says like you were, especially as a minority, you were taught to be a part of this army of the workforce.
You were
Of if
trained.
you go to prison, you'll exactly. If you go to prison, you're probably gonna do really good in prison because you've been trained to shut the fuck up and take a beating. Like
Yeah.
the same way that like if you're gonna be taken advantage of by your lovers, then that's cool because you've been taught by society that you're gonna get taken advantage of by people who you like by something that you wanted to do.
You
Because
signed up
like
for
at the end of the
this.
day, kind of I think one of you guys
Yeah.
exactly you kind of signed up for this. I know we only gave you 10 choices that were the same thing, but you signed up for this one. So
Yeah.
it's just crazy. It's just really crazy. And again, that just kind of takes me back to that idea that she brings up of like satisfied workers. Like she says, folks who are out of the paid workforce, women and men who do unpaid work in the home, as well as other happily unemployed people, are often doing what they want to do. While they are not rewarded by an income, their day-to-day life often provides more satisfaction than it would if they got a high-paying job in a stressful and dehumanizing environment. And like that right there, like is just I know we talked about this part of the chapter before, but that's where the explanation right there is just so right. Like I find a lot more satisfaction in the work that I do when I like it. Um, and just it's not just because I'm like, oh, I'm having fun doing it, but it's like, damn, I feel human, bro. Like I'm not getting
Mm,
so battered down,
yeah.
Um, but I think that's the same thing. I think the reason that it's important that bell hooks is because I think it's it can replicate that her philosophy of that can replicate to the home environment, the education environment, like most environments in general. I mean, at the end of the day, we are a capitalist society, and therefore all our societal structures are like drowning in capitalism and patriarchy and racism. And so whatever represents capitalism in the household probably is the same at school and the same at work.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because at work you're coming home to people that all just got off a shift or just all got off of doing something that was asked of them by the capitalist society. And if no one experienced a loving environment at work, it's very rare that they're all going to come home and create a loving experience at home.
Yeah.
Like no one, like and then it takes me back to that quote. Fuck, what was the guy that wrote that book about the world being on fire? Fuck. um, but it's this video by him. I gotta remember his name. But he's talking to another activist who's a woman, and they're talking about like having a relationship and how, you go to work, you smile at the white man, you take what the white man tells you, and who's representation of the capitalist, the boss. Go home, and you give it to your wife. Like you give her all the shit that was given onto you. And then I saw a fucking TikTok that takes that just a little further, but then it's like the mom yells at the kids, and then the kids take that to school. Or, it's just a whole cycle.
Wow.
And so it's just hard to say that you're experiencing a loving environment anywhere when there's one place that controls most of your life, and that one specific part is not a loving environment. Um, which also kind of takes me back again to the part of self love and how she just says like it's not just the fact that like if you can't love yourself, you won't be able to love anyone else. But it's the fact that you can't even expect that from anyone else. You can't expect the things that you want to give yourself but can't from anyone else. Um, and it's also the fact that like I don't know how to word, but like if you can't find a loving environment in one place, you can't really force it in there. It takes me back to the summer, Bryce, because I know like for a minute there in the job that we worked over the summer, I was just like, man, this place is fucking horrible. Like this place is actually hell. But then but then you would find those little places where you had those people around you where it was love. Like it was love all around you. Like we made friends that were able to make it feel like a loving environment. The students that wanted to like actually
Hmm.
interact and learn made it feel like a loving environment. And it was just when we had to go downstairs that we could feel like you could literally feel a cloud come over the room. Because now it's everybody. It's no longer just your loving community that you were able to build within your classroom, but you leave your classroom and it's everybody's fucking like, suffering ass, and you have to take it with you too. It's just crazy, bro. Like it's hard not to. It's hard not to get a taste of it throughout your day. Like, especially when you're
Hmm.
like even when you're trying to avoid it.
Hmm. But I think that that is really just the
But yeah, boys,
power.
I don't know.
I really do think that's the power of really one of her quotes at the end of the chapter. Um, that really just comes back to why self love is so important. She says that giving ourselves love, we provide our inner being with the opportunity to have the unconditional love we may always have longed to receive from someone else. And I really think that like that
Yeah,
was the foundational part of that experience this summer was like we realized and reaffirmed the love we had for ourselves, which gave us the opportunity to create community, which helped us really deal with the fact that like the outside world is so unloving. But I
no,
really do
yeah,
think that that's why, for me at least, why the self love factor is so important.
yeah. No, yeah. I think at first the first time I read this book and I read this chapter, it was like super confusing to me. Um, exactly what her analysis was. Um, because she goes all over the place. She to talk about commitment. She talks about self love. She talks about work. She talks about success. She talks about affirmations, and it's because she kind of breaks down another author's steps on how to create self love. But I think she brings all this stuff to say that like this is commitment. You know, being able to commit to yourself through self love, being able to
Hmm.
put the work in to create these loving environments, and
Yeah. Yeah.
reap what you sow. Like get the benefits from what you've planted with these people. That's what commitment is. Because if you're just trying to plant seeds and you're like, fuck, seeds never grew, I'm out this bitch. Like, then you're
Yeah.
not committing to it. And so she says, like, first you have to lay the groundwork of commitment, and then you'll see that it's gonna give you a benefit. And from that benefit, you have to grow even more commitment. And that can only
Yeah.
start when you're willing to commit to yourself. You're willing to commit to the things you do in life. Because, bro, if you're going to work every day, and let's say it is a very just draining job, but if you're going to work, even before you get to work, and you're like, man, I fucking hate this place. I don't even want to go there. Like, just the fact that I have to drive in that direction is already killing me. Then, like, you're never gonna go to work and have a good day, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard. I know it's hard, bro, because it's so much easier said than done. It's so much easier to tell someone just love your job than it is to love your job. Um, but man, like it's so hard, but it's so important. And it just
Hmm.
like again, I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think
But
ideally,
go ahead.
I think yeah, I think you hit it like spot on when you had mentioned like so the idea of commitment, right? And when I read that commitment, I also read on parts about how, to be committed, one has to be self-aware of their actions. You have to act out of
Mm,
intentionality. Like I'm going to do this, and I think this is where it comes out. Like, yeah, sure, I do not like my job, but I am going to make the efforts to one, give myself the energy
mhm.
to do this work, but also with time, slowly be able to establish those type of connections with coworkers, or
No, yeah, yeah,
with wherever you're at, but the idea goes back to commitment, and commitment involves like being self-aware of your motives, your actions, which is why like loving is not an easy task, it's a constant
yeah,
reminder, it's a constant of you telling yourself these positive affirmations, these things, because she had mentioned, how I won't go too much into that topic, but the idea is that, when we reflect back on our childhood trauma, we develop this very negative talk about ourselves where we start where she says it is good to recognize our childhood trauma. It is good to know where that voice stem of where when we call ourselves unworthy of love. It's good to take note of that. But she also says like at the same time, when we dwell in that type of mindset, where for too long, then we're not allowing ourselves to move on and act out of love, to move on and believe that we are capable of giving ourselves love, right? And but it's an
mhm,
act of intention. You have to be aware of it. And so even when it comes to coming to work, right? You just mentioned right now where you had said that, fuck, I don't want to go to work. I hate driving towards that direction, But
yeah,
ideally, yes, if you and this is what Hook says, if you could find a good job that you don't hate, cool, like do that, you know. But I mean, if you're struggling with a job right now that you really don't like, still do your best to give yourself those affirmations that you're going to give it your all. Because when you give it your all, when you give that dedication, there's no promises. There's no promise of like, oh, you're going to come out like super duper happy. But no, you're acting with intention, and that acting with intention is only going to grow with time. It's going to grow so that you could realize, hey, like while acting in love, you're at the same time giving yourself self-love.
Mm,
You're giving yourself the attention that would normally be neglected if you were to just go into work with like a mundane mindset. You're like, fuck, I'm just going in, going out, clocking in, clocking out.
Hmm.
Compare that mindset, like fuck it, I'm just clocking in, clocking out, with the all right, I'm clocking in. Sure, I don't like it, but I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do my best work, and then just having that mindset slowly builds up a different mindset where you're like, yo, I know I could do better things. I know that this isn't my line of work, and with time,
Hmm.
I'm gonna
yeah,
find a different line of work that'll suit me. That type
Yeah.
of mindset, I think, is beneficial, right? And that only comes through talking to yourself kindly, telling yourself that, hey, this is not, I am not where I'm at, right? You got to be honest
Hmm.
with yourself. I'm not where I'm at, but I don't have to stay in this spot. I can move on from this. I could learn. Now, will it ever be settled? I don't know. Will we live in a period where capitalism will be done with within our life, within our generation, within our line? I don't know. Hopefully it will break down, but even if not,
right,
we keep on pushing. We keep on pushing because love at the end of the day is I when I think of love, I just think of this hope, hope, this action of keep on
Hmm.
moving forward even when we cannot see it, even when we don't see the immediate results. It's this
Exactly.
desire to keep moving on, right? When we
And
feel
how,
like we're unworthy, when we feel like we suck, when we reflect on our past actions and we think like, wow, I am such a horrible person. You could live in that mindset and then just keep on living life within that mindset. But another way to give yourself to slowly build up that self-esteem, I think, is like taking a shot on yourself, saying, no, you know what? I know that my life isn't where I want it to be, but with time, like giving yourself those words of affirmation that no, I am worthy of love, even if you don't believe
mm,
it at that moment. Moving towards that direction, and when you move towards that direction, slowly with time it'll come up, and slowly with time you'll be
hmm,
able to build and surround yourself with that community. I have my community with you guys. I see that. I see
hmm,
because I see you guys doing that for yourself through our
hmm,
communications, through us just chatting about our stories, our individual life. I see how we're already trying to move on and grow, and we surely are. I believe it. I see
hmm,
it. So, I mean, that's it's a hope that with time, I think will grow. But you got to
hmm.
take a chance on yourself.
no, yeah, I like that you brought that up, man. I like the way you put it too. I mean, that is like the last two things that I wanted to talk about was how Bell Hooks brings up. Originally, she brings up living consciously, and then towards the end of the chapter, she brings up living purposefully, and like how
Hmm.
those are two different things, but they work hand in hand. Living consciously in knowing how the things that you're doing in your life are going to affect you, the effect that you have on it. Uh,
Yeah.
living aware of your past and how it affects you, and how it's going to affect your future, and what you want to do with those things that you've learned, and then living purposefully, finding purpose within what is going on in your life. Um, I think those are all really important things, and it also goes back to the idea of love being a conscious thing and having to love consciously, love
Hmm.
purposefully.
Because it's a
Um,
verb.
and like
Yeah.
in love, no, what'd you say, Bruce?
I said because it's a verb.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, no, yeah, exactly, because it's an action, and so I think like with love, it sounds like, in a relationship, what can I do to express my care? How do I best express my loyalty? How do I best express that I want justice for this inconvenience or something like that, for this issue in our relationship? But like at work, it's hard to do that, like it's hard, especially when you feel alienated from your labor. And how Javi brought up, like there was things that helped me, do that. Like I was able to, when I was working like super demanding jobs for mass production, I started, taking it and being like, all right, like how can I do this for myself? Like what are the
Yeah.
things that I can do at work that are for my benefit, so I can feel like I'm doing my job, not just to survive, but because it's something I like, you know. And so, you start thinking of shit like, oh, I know that this is mass production. I know that I'm being exploited, but fuck, I'm feeding people, you know.
Mm,
Like, maybe I can get to work tomorrow and on time and work on my like time on my time issues on getting shit done on time. Just little
yeah,
shit like that for yourself. And I know that it sounds so corny, but man, in this society, especially, you gotta take care of yourself in ways like that.
yeah,
Because if not, it'll just feel like you're bound to come down at some point, you know? And so I think it's definitely important that you take that conscious living outside of just living in a loving environment consciously and loving consciously, and conscious in all your activities. It's hard, but it'll definitely make your life feel worth it. I don't know. Like I don't know. I think we've all experienced those days where like it feels like you've gone through a span of 10 or more days that were all just one day and it all just went like zoom, 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 you know? And I
mm.
think those are like the best examples of like when we weren't living consciously.
Yep,
Like we were
yep,
just going with the flow, with the waves, with the current of work or of life. Like we went with the current that life was taking us on. And then we wake up one day and we're like, fuck, I am depressed. And it's like,
yeah,
because not to say that you're going to avoid all depression through living consciously and loving consciously and purposefully, but it'll help to just feel like instead of just going with the current of the river, that like you're at least pushing yourself off and like trying to push through it, you know?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, no, like I think that's a very I'm really glad you brought that up, Javi, because I love that perspective for sure. But if you boys have um no quote or anything you want to bring up, I just want to read the outro. If that's good with y'all.
yeah.
Okay. Her last paragraph here, she does a little work on conclusion, but she says, in an ideal world, we would all learn in childhood to love ourselves. We would grow, being secure in our worth and value, spreading love wherever we went, letting our light shine. If we did not learn self love in our youth, there is still hope. The light of love is always in us, no matter how cold the flame it is. Or sorry, no matter how cold the flame, it is always present, waiting for the spark to ignite, waiting for the heart to awaken and call us back to the first memory of being a life force inside a dark place, waiting to be born, waiting to see the light. Um, but yeah, like that's really the truth, man. Like we know that in an ideal world, all of this would just be so obvious to everyone. In an ideal world, we would all already share a definition of love and we would understand it as a verb. Um, but it's not. And I think there's some labor that must be done for us to get to that point. But I will say this 1,000 times. I'd much rather be doing this emotional and psychological labor within myself than any physical labor. So
Yeah.
so yeah, like I'm gonna double down. I'm gonna double down on taking care of myself every time, you know?
Mm.
But yeah, y'all got any thoughts on that at conclusion?
Bryce, would you like to go or?
I know you got it.
Well, my
Oh,
boys,
okay. No, yeah. Yeah, I think very much so. It's like what I mentioned. It's the idea of, okay, you haven't been able to, I don't know, for however many years you've decided that you were going to consciously neglect loving yourself. There's still hope for you. And I think that's what Hooks is just trying to say. Even if you're slowly at this age in your, if you're at this point in your life where you're like, you know what, I want to make some changes. There is still hope, right? Self love is always available, right? As opposed to
um,
trying to find love from other people, and especially like romantic partners, because right, because a lot of the times we tell ourselves these messages that like I'll feel fulfilled in life once I have that partner in my life who can love me, you know. But Hooks
Mm.
even says like, isn't that silly? Isn't it so silly that we tell ourselves that we need that. Like, now obviously, yes, we do need love, right? We do need love from other people, right? But in regards to the relationship atmosphere, it's crazy to think that we are dependent solely on one individual to fulfill the needs that can be fulfilled, and we should work towards fulfilling on ourselves because we are worthy of it. And
Hmm.
it's like we can do this work, right? As opposed to putting the burden on somebody else, which slowly and surely enough does lead to negative behaviors within a relationship, negative like ways of treating your partner or how your partner treats you, right? We should give we should take a chance on ourselves that we are worthy of love, that we can do this, you know? And it's odd and silly of us to think that uh we need that other person, right? And
Hmm.
Yeah.
so it's just taking a chance. That's all I'll say. It's just a matter of taking a
No,
chance on
yeah.
yourself. Start now, you know, and you know you'll realize whether or not you decide to pursue a relationship with another individual. You'll have your foundation.
Yeah.
You'll have that set
Hmm.
foundation set. You know, surely there will be days. There may be seasons where that foundation starts to get a little wobbly and whatnot, and then we feel like okay, we obviously this isn't working. So we break down and we go back to our own like patterns. But I mean, it's not easy and it's okay if we fall, if we for some reason we mess up and we neglect ourselves at one point, it's okay. Take the time to be self-conscious, aware again,
Yeah.
and try again. Try again. And the more you practice this, dude, the brain is an amazing organ that like you could train the brain to do things, you know? And it's just a matter of
Yeah.
trying to practice self-awareness, trying to practice and initiate self-love, right? I have this quote on my, and I know it sounds cheesy, but like this thing really has helped me, like putting quotes like on my iPhone, like as my wallpaper. I always thought it was really cheesy for people to do that, but the quote that I have it says like do not listen with the intent to reply. So whenever you're in a conversation with somebody, you know, it says like do not listen with the intent to reply, but with the intent to understand. Over
Hmm.
time, you know, because that's something that I really struggle with. I know that like, you know, like I'll listen to a lot of people, but my immediate thing is how can I help them? How what can I say to make them feel better?
Mm.
But I'm not listening, you know? And so like but over time, reading this quote whenever I open up my phone, you know, if I'm gonna open up my phone, then like give me a little, you know, because I don't want to be. Aside from being on the phone for like 3 hours or 4 hours, at least give me something, you know, to spark my interest. And so when I read that quote, slowly and surely, like my brain picks that up, and I've noticed that, like throughout my days when I'll be in conversations with people, I remind myself of this, and it helps me to come back to the present, to to recognize the other and to be
Hmm.
with them, to just listen. And many times listening is all a person ever really wants, you know. But
Hmm.
I use this example,
No, yeah.
but we can use aside from this example, we can implement these affirmations. Affirmations sound corny as hell, and even Hooks mentions that. But surely
Yeah.
with time, I think we could build and grow ourselves and
Yeah.
build that foundation. And if that lucky person comes, in your life, and if you want, if you feel, if you feel good, like you're in this, I don't know, whatever that position may be, like you'll have that foundation and to work with, and hopefully that other person will also have that foundation set too, so
Yeah.
that you guys could only keep growing together. But that's my last
Yeah.
take. But yeah, start with yourself. Start with yourself.
Yeah, I think my final thought is really just echoing what Javi said and going back to that quote I had at the beginning. And I was questioning, okay, like she talks about this commitment to truth. You know, what is that truth that is so fundamental to this groundwork that we're laying? And I really do think that it goes straight to those affirmations. And
Mm.
really,
Yeah.
what Javi was saying was like when we're speaking the truth, like we're speaking what we know to be true of ourselves, and knowing that I'm more than my labor, and I'm capable of being more than the person I am today, and being better than the person that I am today. And even in reflection of when he talks about that special someone coming, is like, at least for me, the understanding and the encouragement is really in the final quote that she added at the end of the chapter is really just do not expect to receive from someone else the love that you do not give yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Most
and so
definitely.
it's like when you know you've invested in yourself, you're not looking for someone else to like fill this hole in you or to fix this part of you or to accept this part of you because you've already accepted and forgiven and filled and invested in yourself.
Mm,
Um, and so reaffirming that
Exactly.
truth is crucial and reminding, like how he was saying, your brain. Because I think we easily forget things. I personally forget things all the time that I know to be true, but that's why those affirmations are so key because you're reminding yourself of really the truth of who you are and who
The
you will
truth.
be.
mm.
Mm. I
Well
love
said.
that actually. That was a great way to put it. But yeah, no, I think, man, your guys' final thoughts made me have one more final thought, which is just like, um, but
Okay,
Okay.
bitch.
like, fuck yeah.
Drop
No,
it,
but
bro.
no, like to that truth, I think, like those like you said, those affirmations are again only reminding you who you are. I guess my final thought is just like that part of that corny part, that even Bill Hooks talks about, like how he said, where she says like we've been like pushed away from these, but I don't know, man. I just like when I first started getting into like being able to talk to myself nice, I thought about like the words I wanted to come from other people, you know, like the way you want to be told that some like by someone else that everything's gonna be okay, or that something you did wasn't that much of a fuck up and that you can just learn.
Mm,
It really is silly how like Bell Hook says it's silly to expect that from anyone else, and that's why I think that quote is so important that Bryce brings up because like she goes in on that hoe. Like she goes like she's like, I don't like why would you expect that from anybody else if you're not willing to give it to yourself?
mm-hmm,
And as much as a lot of people hear that and go, well, I am willing to give it to somebody else, but it's like, dude, like you're not gonna be able to do it for so long because you've never been able to do it for yourself for that long.
mm-hmm,
You can keep up with a relationship for a minute, but it's only going to be easier to keep up when you've done the work. Um,
mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
man, I feel like at this point I'm just talking to myself. I'm about to, but yeah, boys, this was a really good chapter. And I think beyond commitment, she understood that commitment comes with a lot more. Um,
Mm.
most definitely.
but yeah, I love talking to y'all about this chapter. I think this was like the best chapter
Aw.
we could analyze together, y'all.
And it was really cool having Bryce on it.
Aww.
I loved everything that Bryce mentioned. I think it was really insightful. And everything that you said too,
No, yeah,
Frankie. So most definitely really
yeah.
cool.
No, but I appreciate y'all. But next week, the Vatos Next Door will be covering chapter 5 of Bell Hooks All About Love, which I'm trying to get a name before I hang out of this
Spiritual love, I think.
body.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritual Love, which is gonna be, I think, just great analysis from my boy Javi, and I'm ready for it.
Mm.
But yeah, man, I'm excited, and we'll see y'all next week. I hope y'all leave any type of feedback. We're always open to it. And yeah, any last thing for y'all, boys?
So, and I hope y'all have an
All
amazing
right, much love. No,
this
yeah, man.
fucker. Yeah.
I'm
All
so
right.
weak.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Love
but
y'all. Love y'all listeners.
all
And
right,
love you
Vatos
love
Next
you
Door
too
is
guys.
Look,
out.